I've spent a lot of my life dieting. Since high school, really. Can you relate to that at all? What diet do you believe in? There's so many. Do you remember the 80s? When I started dieting, the whole thing was low fat. Cut out all fat. But then we found out that the way companies reduced the fat was to increase the amount of high fructose corn syrup in the product. Turns out that's not a great way to lose weight. Do you remember the Atkins craze? I was swept up in that one too. No carbs at all, but you could eat tons of fat. I remember thinking that was the answer until I heard on the news one day that Panera was in danger of closing because they had the worst quarter profits ever. And I didn't want to lose Panera. So that one wasn't right. Then paleo started showing up on labels and in magazines. Now I see a lot of keto. Which is the diet that you believe in? Have you felt like I have? Like you just ask, are you the diet? Or am I supposed to wait for the next one? Am I supposed to invest in you or not? And that is what the gospel is about today. John the Baptist says to Jesus, listen, I'm in jail now. I've got a lot on the line. Are you the one? Are you the one? Or am I supposed to wait for another? I've been telling people the Messiah is coming. Is it you? And Jesus doesn't make it easy for him because he doesn't answer in a way that is satisfying. He says, what do you think? What do you hear? What do you see? How do you feel when you're around me? A false prophet would not say that. Do you know how a false prophet would answer that question? Are you the one? Why, yes, I am. Here I am, say the false prophet. That's also what Scripture says the Antichrist sounds like. Here I am. I'm the answer. But Jesus says, let your life tell you if I am. Let your experience speak to you. One of the reasons that people did not follow Jesus wholeheartedly is because he didn't make big promises. There was no guarantee that you would lose 10 pounds in the first 2 weeks of following Jesus. He also didn't promise to overthrow the Romans. He didn't promise to make one substantial change in society. He called one person at a time, and when they would ask him a question, he would say, come and see. That is what makes him different than all of those antichrists, all of those false prophets. He was trying to not change the world, but change people's lives one at a time. False prophets are a lot like the promoters of a fad diet. The sad thing about a diet is you put all this effort into it, and in the end, it actually makes you fatter. It's devastating to know that, but it's true. Fad diets make you fatter because you know what happens if you give up carbs. You'll do great. Every diet will work in the beginning. But what happens when you have to start eating carbs again? This is the difference. False prophets always will hook you on that initial result. They'll hook you on the glamorous outer product. They'll make you see that your outer world can change for a time, but they don't even attempt to go near the inner world. And they do something even more difficult for us than that. They're marketing geniuses. Here is something that false prophets and people who are marketing geniuses, promoters of fads, try to convince you of. The key is to make you think that there is a secret to life that everybody else has except you. That's the key to marketing. It's the key to false prophecy. Make them think that they're missing something and that you alone have it. And haven't you ever had that insecure feeling? That's a pretty human feeling, that there's a secret to life, and it was taught to everybody on one day in 5th grade, and you were sick that day. And when you came back, nobody told you. It's that feeling that everybody else knows the secret except you. That's an awful feeling, and almost all of us have it, at least sometimes. And that's what the marketers know, and that's what the false prophets hook us on. You know that secret that you missed in 5th grade? I got it. I can help you find it. Just buy my product. You'll have it. But Jesus tells us something totally different. He says, you know what the thing about life is? It's really hard. And you can't do it without God. You can't go on a journey like this without God. But then he tells us the real secret. God is right here. You will never have to go a day trying to do it without God. It's not even possible to do it without God. You might not be connecting with God, but that won't stop God from being right here. So once you know that, it's bad news for the marketers. It's bad news for the false prophets, because you're no longer a consumer. You don't have any emptiness that needs to be filled by a product. You just need God, who's already right next to you, to come inside. You just need to open the door and God will rush in. It also teaches us that our circumstances aren't the most important thing in our life. God is not as interested in changing our circumstances as God is in changing us. It's not our circumstances that need to change. It would be nice if they would, but we all know that they will eventually. We all know that this journey doesn't last forever, that it goes on to something that will completely change our circumstances. And just because you have God in your life and got up early to come in the dark to church on a Sunday morning doesn't mean that your life is necessarily easier than your neighbors' lives. You don't get a pass from suffering or hard things. And there may be some important things in your life that you are lacking right now. You might be in a financially hard spot. You might have a broken heart. You might be in the middle of something really, really hard, and the most important thing or person in your life is missing right now. But the secret that Jesus tells us is, if you have God, you don't lack anything. You've got everything that you need and more. And all you need to do is drop the resistance to that. The thing is, we're waiting for Christmas. And so we light these candles in anticipation. When is Jesus coming? Our closing song today is about waiting and anticipation. Soon and very soon he's going to be here. And that's all wonderful and it's all true. But it's also a mistake if we forget that in a few minutes we're going to receive him in our bodies and in our souls. Body and blood, soul and divinity. We don't have to wait for him. He's going to be right here. And it's way closer than a porcelain baby in a manger creche. He's going to be right here in us, with us. But if you are still not convinced and you still think there's a secret that you lack, I will tell you that I heard recently about the cotton ball diet. Before you eat a meal, you start by soaking cotton balls in liquid, and then you eat them, and it makes you feel full so you don't eat as much at the meal. Now, if you do try that, I am so glad I'm not your plumber. But you don't have to try that, because there's nothing to buy. There's nothing to wait for. There's no gimmick that you need. We're not lacking anything.